Hi, I'm Ben, an animator.
And I'm Miguel. I make animated content. Yeah, sure.
And welcome to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. Hey guys, Ben here. Welcome back to the show. And I just gotta say, thank you so much for listening. As we're coming to the end of 2019, I'm just thinking about all the great input and feedback I've gotten from you guys over the last almost year and a half, I want to say, of the podcast. And it's been fantastic. Thank you guys so much for listening. Christian, who used to run the podcast with me, and I are so grateful for you. And we are even more passionate than ever to talk about and explore the visual, literary, and performing arts and any other kind of art that's out there in this podcast. And speaking of, we get into a lot of those kinds of topics today with our guest, Miguel Martinez Fierro. I had the privilege of talking with Miguel, who is an animator, he's an author, illustrator, he's his own podcast host, and the list just goes on and on. And in this episode, more than talking about the creation of Miguel's art, we talk a bit more about his own artistic influences and things that have kind of caused him in his life to make art. And therefore, that's why we have the title of this episode a little different than our usual kinds of titles, Fear and Laughter, as that is a theme that we talk about in Miguel's past and what influences his art today. So I'm super excited to share this episode with you guys. Just a few things. In this episode, Miguel and I talk with lowered voices because we recorded it at his house. Not only was it after a long day of work for both of us, but his young son was sleeping in the next room, and we were trying not to wake him up. So we have lowered voices in this episode. And for all you fans of harmonic cussing, which is Christian and I covering over the unflattering language of our guests with a harmonica sound, you guys are going to get some of that today. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, Christian and I have a passion to have anyone at any age be able to learn from the insight of the fantastic guest artists that we have on the show. And sometimes what that means is just covering over things that just, isn't for everybody. So I hope you guys are just as excited as I was to talk and hear from Miguel about his journey in art. So enjoy this episode, guys, and you guys will hear from me at the end to talk about what we have coming up next for the podcast. Miguel, thanks for coming on the show, and as I should say, thanks for welcoming me into your house because we're recording at your house today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This is something I got to tell everyone who's listening to the podcast is Miguel is like the chillest friend that I know from college. Where I think out of all the friends that I made at college, I think I only hang out at your house. And I come over pretty frequently. So thank you.
Yeah, dude, for sure. And we always watch some weird, obscure movie that you've never seen before. And I'm always I can't believe you haven't seen this movie before. What was it, Goonies or something we saw last time? And you're like, I've never seen Goonies.
Yeah, and then Beetlejuice the other day. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what, you never seen Beetlejuice before? It's such a classic.
I know. Well, anyway, and that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because not only do you have an extensive knowledge of just film and media, you're always telling me about something new that's coming up that I haven't heard of, which I'm always super excited about once you told me. But because of those inspirations, you also create some amazing art. So let's talk about some of the things you've done, because I kind of mentioned this. If some of you guys have been checking the Up and Coming Artist Podcast Instagram, I put up Miguel's an author, he's an illustrator, he's a comic creator, he's a story artist, and he just pitched a Frederator.
Yeah,
What?
Yeah, that was cool.
Can we start with that? Because now, for people who don't know what Frederator is, could you talk about that for a second too?
I kind of just know the gist of pretty much what you guys know. They help develop certain shows. Their big one was Adventure Time, and Castlevania is one of the most recent ones, and yeah, I got the opportunity to go and like pitch them one of a show that I've been working on, and it was fun. It was a really cool experience. Like they were like both really nice, very like welcoming, and
who were they? Do you know?
I forget. Like one of the girls' name was Nikki. I forget the other girl's name.
Shout out.
But they were cool. They were really nice. They gave me candy at the end of it, which was cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's always a plus. It's like when you leave the doctor's office as a kid and you get a sticker or something, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I was like, all right, cool. Thanks for the candy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really nice experience. They gave me some cool notes, and definitely going to work on that. And yeah, I just like, I don't know. I just love creating content that like I feel passionate about, and it was really easy for me to talk about it and just kind of have fun with it, you know, mostly just have fun, like laugh a little bit about everything, and yeah, just have a good time.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. And can you just for like really briefly talk about the show that you were pitching? Because Frederator basically, yeah, like you were saying, they help make shows happen. So
Yeah.
what were you pitching to them?
It was just like a personal story, which I feel like they were big on that. They kept telling me like, because I asked them like, what are you guys looking for? And they're like, oh, we are looking for people who have like a just kind of like a voice, you know, something that's not derivative. And some of my stuff was a little derivative, I'm not gonna lie, and definitely working on stuff like that. But any tips that I can give people, just kind of like, they were just saying like, be yourself, tell personal stories, things that are true to you. And they were saying like characters that like, even if the story isn't so well, you still kind of want to hang out with that character, you still want to be like their friend, like cosplay like them. And that's kind of stuff that I took away from it.
Yeah.
And you know, stuff that I'd love to share with people who are trying to make a pitch for themselves is that I'm working on that right now too, is just kind of making the characters more a little bit more lifelike, that you're like, oh hey, like if I want to hang out with this dude, like this guy listens to this band, and I know that they hate this kind of stuff, and this type of stuff is like the coolest thing in the world to them, and they love Snickers versus like Twix, you know, like those like subtle differences.
And there's that candy, you know, it's all coming together.
Yeah, full circle, back to candy.
Well,
keep it sweet.
Yeah, well, I say that because I had to say this while we're talking about candy. I am currently eating a Martinez Fierro.
Oh, you like the bootleg Reese's?
Yeah. It's a spoonful of peanut butter with chocolate chips all over it, and it is just as good as it sounds.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And you leave a little bit of chocolate chips at the bottom, so in case when they fall off, you get to like little...
Yeah, re-scoop.
Re-scoop that back in.
No. Well, that's actually what you were saying at the end of talking about your time at Frederator is something that I want to get into with you. Because you're talking about how you make an interesting character is, you know, really knowing all these things about them from your past, you know, from their past, and bringing yourself into it. And that's another thing that I want to get into on the podcast with you is you have like a very interesting past. Like you owned your own smoke shop. Yeah. You were originally a graphic design major. Yeah. So like
all before 21.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, and that's what makes you just a fun person to hang out with, but also you put that into your art, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, dude. Always been really ambitious. Still trying to, I guess, make it. I don't know how you would put it. Like,
I think we all are.
Yeah, right. Like the American dream, and that's pretty much it. Like a lot of it like comes from like my grandparents and like people that like pretty much like they immigrated over here to give us a better life, and that's always been like the thing that's been driving me, is just trying to make my family happy, just kind of like being a representative of them kind of a thing, and like always kind of been like putting like my best foot forward. I don't know. Yeah, like just kind of like that. It's just because you think about it like, oh man, like they did all this stuff to get over here, and I'm just gonna sit on my butt, like, you know, like no way. Like so yeah, definitely like going to a shop when I was like 21, and then I sold that while I was still going to school for graphic design. But I had to sell it just because things got tough, you know, my family, like, you know, we lost my grandma around that time, and I was just like, I got to focus on my education more than the shop, and I sold that and just kind of went back to school, and it was just a tough time, and finished my graphic design degree, which was like, dude, back in 2007, like,
yeah,
back when we used, what was it, 3ds Max or 3D Max?
Yeah.
Do you know that program?
I don't know it, but I know of it because it's now owned by Autodesk, who also does Maya.
Right.
So yeah, I know about it. But wait, so you were doing 3D stuff in graphic design?
Yeah, it was weird. It was a 3D and multimedia associate degree at Westwood, which is like no longer around since.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the classes were weird. Like it was, like I think that's probably why they're not around anymore. But one of the classes, like no me to dog them, but like one of the classes was for my 3DS or 3D Max class. The final was to go watch the movie Doom.
Really?
With the Rock.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But I learned some cool stuff in there. Like we made like asteroids and stuff, like out of noise. Like they taught us like cool things like that, and yeah. But then they taught us like editing, and that's kind of where I fell in love with animation. Was we learned Flash, and it was like really new at the time. And one of the teachers was like, pick a line from a movie and animate, and I'll give you the puppet character of Bill Clinton to use.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What audio did you pick?
Oh, dude, I used some audio from the movie Half Baked with Dave Chappelle in it.
Oh, that'll have to be another one of our movie nights. But
it was perfect because like there was during that whole controversy where he was like, I did not inhale. Like sure, Bill.
Yeah.
And like I did that like with a line from Half Baked, and my teacher loved it, and he's like, oh dude, I love this, like this is awesome. Like, and then I did one of Snakes on a Plane, like and I just put like random scenes from like Pulp Fiction in it. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I just had a lot of fun. And
all with Bill Clinton?
No, the other one was I made my own like Samuel Jackson rig.
Oh, nice.
But it sucked because like I lost all that content on the USB.
No.
Yeah, it was such a bummer, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Which goes back to back up your stuff. Dude, or when your computer crashes and you just get that blue screen of death.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, boom!
Yeah. Or you just get if you're on Mac, you get the spinning wheel of death that just never goes away.
It's so terrible. Or when Windows just randomly updates on you.
Oh, yeah.
They're just like, we're going to update right now just because we're just going to mess with you.
Yeah.
We know that your project's due in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we're going to update.
Yeah. It's like the most inconvenient times every time.
Thanks, Windows.
Yeah. So, no, you were talking about just now how you kind of transitioned from graphic design to animation kind of through that class. What made you really stick with animation? Because you went back to school later, which is how we met, to study animation. So what was it about that experience that really drew you back to it?
Well, that's what was kind of a bummer, is that after graduating from Westwood, it wasn't an accredited place, so I couldn't really go back to school to get my bachelor's, because I stopped and just got my associate when all that stuff with my family went down, and I was just like trying to focus on them, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'll just go into sales, because I love technology, I love tech, and pretty much part of like the whole graphic design thing was just figuring out software and programs. And when I went into cell phone sales was when the smartphone sales thing started happening, and they needed people who were more techie and can talk about it. And I was like, cool, I'm down. Like, I'll do that. And I did that for a while, and I was making pretty good money. But then I don't know, like I'd always draw, and I would always do things, and I was just like, art was always in my life somehow. It was always like, no matter where I went, I always had my sketchbook with me, or like sketching something, or making a video of something, or like just mostly like, I feel like not just animation, but film in general. Just like I always looked up to like the directors more versus the actors in film. And it all kind of ties around to like when I met my wife, is that we started dating, and when we met, she was like, what do you do? And I was like, at the moment I was unemployed, and I was like, I do freelance graphic design.
That's the right answer.
And she's like, yeah, like you're pretty much unemployed. Like, and I was looking for jobs, and things just weren't working out. And originally, I actually went back to school to be a Spanish teacher.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, because you know how they tell you major changes like all the time. Like everybody wants to be a psychologist, and they take like all this like. Yeah. And but yeah, I went originally to wanted to be a Spanish teacher because my wife's a teacher, and I was like I just thought of it like as entertaining people still, like just like a stand up, like but it's obviously different. Like she teaches like science and other things, but
there's creative aspects to it though. I mean, like coming up with the curriculum, and like and it always feels good to like.
Yeah, I'm not dogging it. I love it. Yeah, like I was like even like. In the future, I'd love to still teach. Like, I'd love to be like, hey, this is what I learned in animation and come up like with stuff. But yeah, I went back to school to do that, and because I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew how much my wife loved it, and I don't know why people like that was always the most fulfilling thing to me in cell phones was teaching people how to use their phone and kind of like enriching them with knowledge. Like, what? I didn't know I could do that on here. Like, yeah, bro, like. The future, and just empowering people that way. I was like, yeah, maybe I can do that with teaching. But then I was like about to transfer, and I was just like, I don't know, like something was just like, I don't know what it was. It was just something that was like, I forgot where we went. Like, we went to some like art show in Santa Ana at the Art Walk, and I think it was actually California. Cal State had a gallery there, and they all had a bunch of galleries. And I just remember going to this one gallery, and they had a bunch of like, just like sketches, and like really cool drawings, like of like some animation students. And I was like, whoa, like, oh, this is like a thing. Like you can actually go to school for this. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
you're like, I sketch all the time.
Yeah, like I never thought like like. Because I was always the weird kid that'd be like watching cartoons and stuff, and I'd be all about it, and all my friends are like talking about chicks and like doing this and going out. I was like, yeah, I love all that, but like, how about we watch some Adventure Time?
Yeah.
Or like watch Night Before Christmas or something weird, But yeah, I was at that galleries and like I just looking at it, and then one day my wife's like, yeah, I think they have a program at Cal State Fullerton. And I was like, no way, like that's just right down the street.
Yeah.
And I looked into it, and I saw that I just needed to take like a certain amount of art classes first semester to transfer. And I was like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, you're crazy. You shouldn't take all these 4 art studio classes all at once.
At the same time.
You're going to go bananas.
Yeah.
And I pretty much did.
Yeah.
I was like up all night painting. Like I just had like my headphones on, like till like the wee hours of the night, like the witching hours. I was like, oh my god! And I live in Santa Ana, and like I just hear like people outside. Like sometimes I thought it was fireworks. I was hoping it was fireworks. And
while you're just like, I'm just gonna draw this thing.
And I was like, oh, all right, cool. Keep drawing. Keep painting. But I muscled through it, and I was like. I was able to transfer, but before all that, like all the stuff that like from Westwood didn't transfer over because an unaccredited school is unaccredited, so I had to take all the classes again for my associates. So I pretty much went to school twice.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I want to do this animation thing. Like this is it. Like pretty much takes the love of film, my love of sketching. My love of like Flash that I was doing, like all that like weird humor that I like. I'm like, I love like adult animation, like everything. I'm like this is it. Like this is what I want to do. Like it was one of those moments where you're like, oh my god, like, whoa, like like the first time.
The clarity.
Clarity. Like the first time I ever put on glasses, like. I was like, whoa, people can see like this all the time? Like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it was one of those moments.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, and I don't want to fast forward you a little bit too much, but you were just talking about the influence of film, the influence of, you sketching and loving that, but you also talked about the influence of your family and thinking about the art that you're doing now. Say, for example, I kind of alluded to this at the beginning as an author and illustrator, but you've written your own children's book basically for your son.
Right.
And so could we talk about some of that kind of art and how animation has also moved you into doing these other creative projects as well?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, a lot of the stuff that I do and that motivates me is my family. It's like my little son, who's 3 right now, and my wife, my family, all the stories that I grew up with, like going to Ensenada, like every other weekend, and pretty much the children's book that I wrote was because my son was like really into pirates, like super into pirates. Like, it was kind of like weird because we'd go to Disneyland and he'd go on like Pirates of the Caribbean and like wouldn't be scared, and like he'd go on like that Pirates Island and the lair or like with the cave with like the ghosts and stuff, and he would just like go in and out. I'm like, bro, this is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Like I'm a little scared right now. Like
maybe we should go home and watch some cartoons.
Yeah. The heart's like thumping. It's like
yeah.
I want your soul. You're like, what? No, dude.
And little Vincent's all about it.
And he's like, yeah, Dad, come here. Just go right here. We need to get the treasure.
Yeah.
And he's like yo-hoing down the cave. I'm like, all right. So like, yeah, like I made that book for him. I made it like in a couple months or like in a month. I forgot. It was fast.
Yeah, it was a fast turnaround. I remember that.
I was just like so into it, and I feel like that just happens with like inspiration with like everything. Like, I don't know if you feel like that.
I do.
Like you get like those lulls, but then you get like that boost of inspiration.
Energy all of a sudden. Yeah. And actually, to kind of piggyback off of that, and you alluded to it just now, the children's book that you've written for your son, and we'll talk about the name of it in a second, but it's a pirate book.
Yeah.
And so on Instagram, our friend Daniel Jungenberg, who, if you
Daniel.
guys,
yeah, what's up, dude?
he asks, knowing about your book, he wrote, if you were a pirate, what would your pirate name be, and what would be the name of ye ship?
Oh, dude, that's a good question. My pirate. Oh, well. I'd be Blondebeard. I'd be like albino pirate, like Blondebeard.
With the caption, albino pirate.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have gold teeth. I'd have like platinum teeth, so everything would just like be like one blonde, like what? Like I would just glow,
Yeah, you'd just be like as pale as me, and the reflection of the sun would blind your enemies.
Yeah, and that would be my power, my like superpower. Like I would blind my enemies with just like my whiteness, like my whole albino-ness.
It's amazing.
And my boat would be blanco. Just el bote blanco.
Yeah. It just does the same thing. It just blinds your enemies. Reflects your amazingness throughout the.
It's just a big white ship. It's like the Black Pearl but white. It's the White Pearl. And like it will like enter competitions, like lowrider competitions, but they're like pirate boats, and you just hear like thumping, and it's all like with subwoofers. Like, you could just feel it in your chest. Yeah.
That's amazing. So let's talk about your book. What's the name of it, and where can people check it out?
It's called Captain V, the Fiercest Pirate of the Seven Seas.
Ooh, I like that.
And you can find it on Amazon and the Kindle store. And dude, I self-published that thing. Anybody who wants to publish a book, you can do it on your own. Like you could just go on Amazon, Kindles, KDP, I think, and you can self-publish a book. So you don't need to have like somebody like go through a publishing agency or whatever. Just do it. Like if you want to do it, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. I feel like that's the slogan of like this podcast. When I go back and listen to the like interviews of people that have been on the show, it's just like people are just like, yeah, I just did it. That was the only thing, the only difference. I just did it.
Yeah,
you know?
just do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much like it. Like, like you yourself is holding yourself back, Like my family always taught, like, if you want something, ask for it. No one's just going to give it to you.
Right.
You just can go out there and do it, Like, I always think of, like, Kevin Hart, too, when he talks about, like, everybody wants to be famous, but nobody wants to do the work.
Yeah.
But just, like, dude, just do the work. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, well, and it's cool that you did do the work. So yeah, it's a pirate story. You can find it on Amazon. Were there any things in writing that story that, I mean, obviously it was for your son, so that you drew from family or from film or from things that inspired you as you were growing up? Since we were talking about
we were talking about Goonies earlier, and I just loved Goonies. You know, like just that whole like adventure, like treasure hunting. Like that's kind of what inspired the whole book itself. Is that my son and I would go treasure hunting here at home, and like we'd make like pirate maps, and like we'd pretend the closets were caves, and like be like, oh no, there's a big spider here. Oh no, watch out! And he'd have the flashlight, and I'd have like a drumstick that would be a sword, you know, like. And be like, and they're like, oh no, get away, and we like run away, and we just do a bunch of stuff like that, and. Yeah, we have like a kraken that we actually fight. Like it's actually a cardboard box, and it's just like a floaty toy that's from the pool.
Nice.
That's a dragon floaty toy.
It's amazing.
And we vanquished that beast, okay? And yeah, now my wife is safe, and you're welcome.
That's so awesome.
So yeah, like just a lot of play inspired that, and I just wanted something to read to him that I was like, oh, Dada made this, you know, and Dada made it for you, and because of you, and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, I think it's cool too to like kind of tie all together all the things that you love and your inspirations, you know, in order to like make this book. In terms of you were just talking about doing it yourself and self-publishing, as far as, you know, putting it up on Amazon and making it available for people, were there snags or like things that were like difficult to figure out, or was it like really easy and you were able to just put it up?
Dude, it was super easy.
Oh yeah,
like ridiculously easy, where I was like, is this like, I felt like I was getting scammed. Like it was super easy. Yeah, you could do it. Anyone can do it. If you could read it, you could do it.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, and the name of it again, so people can check.
It's Captain V, the Fiercest Pirate of the Seven Seas. Yeah.
Check it out.
It's
on Amazon. Yeah.
I know, I'm ready to go on the commercials now. Like, this episode is sponsored by Goonies. Goonies inspired a lot of shit, bro. I love that movie.
I know, and the only reason that I've seen it is because you let me borrow it.
I know. I was like, dude, just take this, watch it at your own time. But you just need to watch this movie. Yeah, as a kid, I remember just like reenacting a lot of those scenes like at home. Like, you know, we'd always like try to like make videos at home of stupid stuff, and like I think like a lot of movies like that inspired a lot of the stuff that we did. And I was like, because you see like yourself in those characters, like you're like, this is a little kid just like me, and I want to go on an adventure just like that. Yeah. So like we would like pretend to do that at home, like with my cousins, and like a lot of that stuff like came from those like type of adventures, and like a lot of like, you know, like storytelling and things like that, like, you know, because that was one thing too, like we didn't really grow up with like a lot of like cable and things like that, and right. And like we wouldn't really be allowed to play that much outside just because they were just paranoid about the area, I guess. I don't know. Right.
And this was Mexico? Or was
no, like this is like back in like the 80s, 90s, like in Santa Ana area. Oh, but I didn't think it was that bad, to be honest. But, you know, parents. So we pretty much would have to like make up like adventures outside in the backyard, you know, or like, you know, and come up with like new like ways of playing, like game shows and like, you know, things like that. And
yeah, using your imagination.
Yeah, finding a freaking shopping cart outside and be like, this is a ride. Yeah. Get in. This is Indiana Jones. Like, watch out for the snake. Oh no.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I feel like a lot of like imagination, like imaginative stuff came from just like a lot of like watching the movies and then like reenacting it, and like, and if we had like the camera and like the videotape to do it, we would like shoot something. Like I always remember like my cousin and I like loving the old Salsa Picante commercials.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember those?
Yeah, I do.
I had to make one for like my drama class.
Oh yeah.
So like I was always into like production and drama, and like I was never really like acting, but we would make stuff.
Yeah.
And we made this commercial where like I was like, all right, bro, it's gonna be point of view, and he like stripped down into like his white underwear, his like tidy whities. And my cousin, if you know him, he kind of looks like Jack Black. Like,
oh really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Shout out to Silos.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, bro, I'll help you. And he like strips down his underwear in his tidy whities and he hides behind our dog house in the backyard. And this is like at like 8 o'clock at night or something. And like pretty much the whole thing goes down where I'm the person living in the house and I hear a noise outside. I'm like, hey, what are you doing in the back there? And he's just like, what? Huh? I'm just hungry, man. As he's just still there, like in his tidy whities. And I was like, oh man, well, I was just eating some salsa picante. And I had like salsa picante and chips.
Yeah.
Thinking like the obvious thing to do would grab some chips and eat the salsa picante, right?
Yeah.
This grabs the salsa picante and just starts chugging it. And it gets like all over it, everywhere. Just like dripping off his chest, like his lips, everywhere. And he's like, looks at me and he smiles at the camera. He's like, best stuff on earth, salsa picante. And I got it all on film and I turned that in.
Yeah. That's amazing. Now, hopefully that wasn't on that USB you were talking about earlier that got erased.
I don't even know where that tape is, actually. I think my mom or somebody has it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm putting this in your baby book.
Yeah, we used to like do a lot of that in high school for our projects. I just remember like always like trying to like entertain like to like the next level. I'm like, how far can I push this like joke or this bit like in my class for like something that has nothing to do with comedy or anything. Mm-hmm. It was always like kind of like the Miguel show. Like one that I wish we videotaped was which I feel like I'm gonna draw this if anybody wants to help draw this out, but it was for biology and we had to do a project on the muscle system. And like had to like break down what each muscle system did and groups and stuff like that. And my group was like, oh man, like we really like want to get an A on this. Like we all really need this A. And I was like, yeah, dude. Like, but let's have fun with it.
Yeah.
Let's not forget to have fun, guys.
Yeah.
And my teacher was really cool. Like I remember her. She was amazing. Shout out to Mrs. Sari. For the muscle system group, I pitched them the idea that I was like, hey, what if I dressed up like in a muscle suit, like those big muscle suits, like the ones you rent at the costume store, and I do like a striptease, and you guys point out the muscles on me while I'm doing like the strip dance. But like I'll actually like keep my clothes on, you know, like I'll just have like, you know, shorts on. Yeah. But like I'll have like a shirt on top of the muscle suit and like some like pull off pants, like just pull away pants.
The like buttons on the sides. Yeah.
I think it was during the time when like it started becoming cool. I was like, tearaway pants.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're like, all right, well, if Mrs. Sari's cool with it, I was like, sure, she'll be cool with it. And like I didn't even tell them that she said anything. Like I didn't even go up to her. I just did it.
Yep.
So like we did everything else correct. Like the whole project, like the writing portion, everything, like the visuals, everything else was good. And then I was like, I'm introducing some Magic Mike, which is totally inappropriate. Like now that I think about it, I'm like, I could have got expelled. Like, but it was a muscle suit, so it wasn't really like me showing anything. So I was like, it should be fine. Like, and I had a fog machine. Like, oh my God. I had like these like little strobe light, like this boom box. And I like told one of the girls in the group that was like in on it. I was like, all right, when you're ready, just hit play. And it was like music from like the Matrix or something, like the Matrix soundtrack. It's like, damn, and like Rob Zombie comes on, like, damn. And I was like, yes, here we go.
We got bicep over here.
Like I had a cue, like at the song, I was like, all right, here we go. And I'm like snapping away, like getting ready outside, like gyrating my hips. I'm like, oh yeah.
They're pointing out
I
the
kicked the door down, the fog is going, the strobe light is going. I'm like, who's ready for the muscle system? Oh yeah. Like my teacher like gave us all really good grades.
Oh, that's amazing.
She's like, awesome. Well, yeah, dude. And then I was like, yeah, I felt like everything, I was like, I'm gonna make everything a production. And like, I felt like that like trickles on to like everything I do is like, I want to make it like the best, funnest production, like of anything. Like, and like, that's how I feel with any project I go into. I'm just like, I want to make this fun. Like, yeah, there's time to take things serious. There's a time and a place for everything. And I'm all about that, you know, I'm all about like respecting the work ethic, but like, dude, like, let's just have fun.
Yeah. Well, to bring it back to your visual art, do you have all these great stories from your past, which I love hearing about, and I love that you've been putting them into comics about your life, like that you've been doing about like your childhood and stuff. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, dude. Like, I love that. Like, I feel like I got my funny definitely from my grandma, and I love talking about like just putting those out in comic forms, because I know there's a lot of like Latino kids out there that definitely had a grandma like that. You know, I feel like a lot of the things that like I try to put out is like, don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. Like, don't take yourself too seriously. Like ego is definitely the enemy. Like, just laugh at yourself. Don't take yourself too serious. Like, there's one about my grandma, like where she like, there was they said like, when something falls on the ground, like, don't pick it up, or like if it's something you're eating, don't pick it up because the devil already kissed it. You know, so like there's like a comic or like an old joke, I forgot, like it pretty much, like, I try to like remake it the way that I heard it before, where it was like the guy's like walking with their grandma and like they're eating ice cream, and he's like, oh, like, I love my ice cream, and it falls down, and like she's like, oh, don't pick it up, the devil already kissed it, you know. But then like she falls down, and she's like, oh, can you help me? And I'm just like, nah, the devil already kissed you. I'm not touching you. Yeah. You get your bad juju on me. Like,
you got Satan cooties.
Yeah, get your Satan cooties away, you know? And I feel like that's a lot of it, like, too, like, just like that dark humor. Like, growing up, like, we'd watch like shows like Primer Impacto, where they'd have like episode of like The Exorcist. Like, it was seriously an episode of this lady getting a demon exercise out of her on like Univision, and I'm like watching it with my grandma. I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah. But then it would turn to like novelas like right after that, and it's like dramatic and like, no me mires así, Rodrigo, like, cállate. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that person just got slapped. Yeah. Like, oh, Rodrigo. Yeah. So it was always like a weird like duality of like, of the unexpected, which I feel like comedy is exactly that, with like horror, and like that's why I love such like both genres so much. Is like the unexpected is what gets you, and that's kind of like, it's just funny or it's scary, or it can be both. You know?
Yeah. No, totally.
Why not both?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're bringing up something that I think is really cool too about your work, because we've kind of talked about some of your influences, like, you know, movies, your family, but another one is also like your culture. Like, I didn't think we talked about that too much, but like, you know, you're talking about basically these like colloquialisms, like your grandma would say, from like Mexico. You know, I think that's really cool. I think, like, speaking of, I don't know if unexpected is the right term for this, but like, is that you're pointing out a photo?
Yeah.
Is that her?
No, yeah. I got a picture of my grandma and grandpa that I set up here for Dia de los Muertos. They're actually right here, right behind us, talking about like the culture, like that's actually set up for them. Yeah, my grandpa's birthday was actually on November 2nd. God rest his soul. Dia de los Muertos is always like such a big holiday for me, and just because also it was his birthday.
Wow.
And just celebrating like the life of people, like, you know, versus like just like the macabre of death, you know, like we're like celebrating life. And that's where I feel like a lot of it also comes from, is that like it's a little spooky, you know, I'm not gonna lie, like it's pretty spooky, like, yeah. But like it's really intriguing more than anything. Like we take trips to Mexico all the time, and you'd always learn some new fact about like the town or something that you'd be in, or like some ghost story. And you're like, oh, this happened here. And like there's a doll that's possessed in this town, and it belongs to this girl, and and like, you know, we're trying to get money for this priest to do an exorcist on it. And wow. Yeah, and like my brother and sister have a story about that, where like they went to this town, like that happened, and my stepdad like gave the person money for it to happen. And supposedly my sister saw this doll thing. Like, I just get chills right just thinking about it. Yeah. And like, yeah, like you'd go to towns like, you know, Leon, Guanajuato, you know, like momias de Guanajuato. Momias means mummies. And like, they're just like these like mummies that were like pretty much like kept in really good condition, and they're on display on the top of a hill, like in a museum, and you could see them, and they're like kind of like the Pompeii kind of thing, like where they're like still in like their form, like where they were like holding like I don't know. I was always like,
that's amazing.
But yeah, like, and you hear stories like that, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy, and your imagination just goes crazy as a little kid, and you're like 8 or 9, you're like, what if they come to life at night, and they come down the hill, and they're like, where are you guys? They're trying to eat us,
Another one of those adventures, the grocery cart. Yeah,
for sure. Adventures everywhere, bro.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had tons of adventures like that. But yeah, just how it's like the spooky, but then it'd be funny, and then you laugh about it because like you laugh about how scared you are. You're like, no, you're scared, dude. Like, no, you're scared, man. Like, I'm not scared. You're scared.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, and part of why I brought that up is because, and we don't need to get too into this because you have. Basically, for everyone listening, Miguel pitched an idea to me about a show that he was developing, or maybe still is developing, and it basically encompassed all these things that he was just talking about, like all these sort of myths and legends from, your cultural background,
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I still feel like I'm passionate about it, but, like, I feel like that's kind of a little derivative right now. There's so much of that around where, like, I still like telling those tales, and maybe I still will keep telling them, but maybe like in another form, or who knows? I don't know. But it's definitely stuff that's influenced me, like the macabre, like the spookiness, like all that. Like I just love it. It's hilarious. It's scary. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. Like it's super fun.
Yeah, and I think you kind of bring something up that's interesting because you were talking about how like kind of fear and humor are all around us all the time. I'm like, it's kind of like every day, you know what I mean? Like, and to bring it back into the artist podcast, it's kind of the way the artists live, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like this fear all the time, but also you're enjoying what you're doing and you're passionate about it, and it meets in this place that we've kind of already said, where it's like you just do it. You know what I mean? Like, but you have to embrace both, I think.
Yeah, dude, and I feel you nailed it, like, embracing the darkness. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I was a kid, I was a pretty big scaredy cat, like, really big scaredy cat.
I still am, yeah.
Yeah, I know. You've jumped in my arms several times, and it's cool. It makes me feel strong. And then like the song
Scooby Shaggy kind of dynamic.
But more like Whitney Houston in that one movie, The Bodyguard. I don't like Kevin Costner. And yeah. But yeah, like I don't know, just go out there and just do it. Like fear is the only thing that's holding you back, I guess. And as a kid, I would like my mom would have to check under like the normal stuff, like check. But then I would hang out with my cousins a lot, and we'd watch like scary movies. Like they're the ones that like would introduce me like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I'm like 5 years old, and I'd have nightmares, But then like I just remember like as a kid, like I forget if it was like my mom or like my grandma or like one of my cousins, but they're just like, no, man, like monsters are just like they're just weird people. They're just kind of like misunderstood, like they're make them your friends, like make monsters your friends kind of a thing. Like they're just, like you're weird. People are just weird. Like, they're just weird things. Sometimes people are afraid of they don't know,
Yeah.
They're afraid of the unknown, like, and that's kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, like I am weird. Like I am a little freaky. I am kind of like one of these monsters. Like, I'm just one of them. Like,
no, yeah, and I think that's cool that you take on all those things and boil down them into your art, and since you have such a diverse kind of background and how you've grown up as an artist, that you are also in a lot of diverse platforms. Like we talked about, you wrote your own book, you were doing graphic design, you've you've been an animator, and just to kind of transition now, you have an animated podcast that you were running. I don't know if you're running it now, but just to kind of bring it back to puppet animation, which got you into it at the beginning.
Right.
You continued that in a podcast.
Circle.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
The circle of life. Oh man,
Could you talk about that podcast first?
Yeah, it was fun. I had to put it on pause for a little bit just because I was trying to like, obviously still get work on stuff, and it was fun. Like I found out about this program called like Adobe Character Animator, which is pretty much like a 2D mocap program. And like as long as you rig everything right, it pretty much does like live animation. Like you move, it moves, and like you can add like triggers and stuff to it, and pretty much speeds up the workflow of like if you want to just make some quick animation thing. And yeah, we did an episode, and we talked about Nacho Libre and made Ben into like a huge fat luchador, and it looked nothing like him.
Like chug some salsa picante.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's cool that like you were talking about too earlier, like embracing new technology, and you were doing that with the podcast, because Adobe Animate was such a new thing, and you're like already thinking about creative ways to implement it, and then to
Yeah, I'm always trying to think about the future and like how to implement new tech into like what we're doing already. Like I'm always like trying to figure out like, oh, what's gonna be the next step or the next evolutionary thing in animation or whatever. And just like different workflows too on how to do that, where I'm like, how can I make this faster? How can I like speed this workflow up, or like make things like there has to be a way, like there has to be. And yeah, like it was fun, like because I dabbled in the VR for a little bit too in Andy's class. Shout out to Andy Fedak.
Yeah.
What up, bro? That fool's the man, dude.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, it was so fun. Like, and I still want to like mesh those two worlds together. Like do like something with the VR and like the 2D mocap. Kind of like how like Nickelodeon did with like the Ninja Turtles. Did you see that? Like it was
with the new show?
Yeah, like they did this thing where like you put on like this VR headset and you could talk to the turtles live action. Like you ask them a question, they respond back. Like,
oh, that's cool.
And they used a character animator to do that.
Oh, wow.
Which there's like this new thing you can do with it now where they have like sliders where like you can set up like triggers and sliders to animate things a lot quicker now. So like if you want to like raise the eyebrows quicker or do like this motion, you just slide it up and down and move some things around.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like this. That software is amazing. Where animation is going is amazing. You can even add like physics to it. So like if you want your character to move a certain way, if it's heavy, you can make it heavier. You can make the hair flow a little bit more in the wind. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I taught myself how to use that through YouTube. That's just kind of how I do a lot of things. It's like if I didn't learn it, but I still want to figure it out, I'll just look it up on YouTube or find how to do it, and pretty much nothing's gonna stop me.
Yeah, that's what's cool. I mean, like we were talking about at the beginning, like you going to school for graphic design, and then you going back to school, but also looking at being a teacher, and then your love of biology and technology. I mean, it's like you're always pushing yourself to learn and then learn to create. I think that those two things combined are what make a really great artist. I think that's really awesome.
And just like, I don't know, thanks, I appreciate that. It's kind of weird to like get compliments, but appreciate you, Ben. I don't know. I feel like some of the stuff is just like you learn these like skills, but it doesn't mean you can just use those skills to do it for one thing. Like you can apply those skills to many things. Like it's kind of like how Adobe Creative Cloud is kind of meant to be used. Like you start something on this program, then you move it to this other program, and the tools are almost set up the same way. Because, and you're like, oh, I know how to use these tools here. Maybe it's like I could figure out how to use them here. And you're like, oh, man, it works kind of the same here. But there's like this little learning curve. But it's just like a Google away. And you're like, oh, okay, now I know how to do that. And like, oh, now I know how to do motion tracking. Like, oh, now I know how to do green screen stuff. And you just kind of like keep adding to your skill set with skills that you already had. They're just kind of like applying that knowledge to a different one, and you just like it's like a video game. You're just like leveling up. You know?
Yourself, right?
Yeah, you just like keep leveling up yourself,
till you become that pale-faced pirate,
Captain Blanco, bro. Pirata Blanco coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's kind of what I want to get into. The last part of the podcast here is since we talked about all these influences and all these areas of art that you've already done, as you look into the future, like we talked about, where the future can be kind of scary, but also super fun and exciting. Like, what do you think the future holds for you in terms of art?
Man, I just like producing stuff. I just like producing content. Just keep producing content. Like, I'm just a creative driven person. Like, if I'm not working on it at a studio or whatever, I'm still going to be doing it no matter what. Like, I just love it. It's fun to me.
Yeah.
I love making people laugh, and scaring people sometimes, but then making them laugh again. Probably going to keep doing comics, probably going to keep working on pitches, probably keep telling stories, man. Like, that's just my thing. It's just story in general. Like, I just love telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
In any form I can get across. Like, I feel like that's probably where it comes, like, I guess full circle. Like, everything, just the culmination is just telling stories, entertaining people, having fun. Like, we've been doing it since the cavemen, like cave drawings. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a caveman that was like drawing, and he was like moving his flame, and he was like telling his story, and it was like, that was like his
pitch room,
his pitch room, like, also like his vehicle to do it. Like, no matter what vehicle you choose, like, just tell that story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Tell your story, like anything, whatever, whatever you think is fun, whatever makes you laugh, and even makes you cry. Like, I cry all the time.
Yeah.
These Pixar movies all the time make me cry. Like, every time I watch Coco, I cry. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, like, but just smiles and cries, and telling stories.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So, I think that's the perfect way to end it. Like, what better way to be inspired than, like, how you've been inspired, And so, where can people go to check out all this awesome work that you've done?
You can go to miguelfierro.net, and you can go on my Instagram, which is Ghosts and Toasts. So that's ghosts_n_toasts, Ghosts and Toast.
That's awesome. That's exactly what we've been talking about. It's like the fear meeting comedy, Ghosts and Toast.
Yeah, just like two things that shouldn't go together, but somehow do and make it work, and it's weird.
And it becomes a little poem. Yeah.
Yeah, Ghosts and Toast. And it's inspired by Step Brothers.
Oh man, just another movie to add to our watch movies together that Ben hasn't seen list.
Yeah, dude. We'll go through all the Guillermo del Toros, all the Scorseses, like all the Finchers. Pick one.
Well, that's awesome, dude. Well, thanks again for letting me come over and talk to you about your art, man. It's been awesome.
Oh no, thanks for coming by. You're welcome here anytime, Ben. And I'll make you some more of those bootleg Reese's cups.
Oh, it's so good. And that concludes my interview with Miguel Martinez Fierro. Thank you guys for listening, and thanks, Miguel, for letting me come over and hear about your amazing experiences. So, what's next for the podcast, you might be asking? Well, I'm so glad you did. Christian and I have a video coming up that's shouting out some fantastic artists that we met at Ground Zero Animation Expo way back in June. So this video has been a long time in coming. But you can check out other artists that we also met at Ground Zero Animation Expo, both in a prior episode of the podcast, if you go back a couple. We also have on our Instagram promoting artists that we met there as well. So check out our Instagram, which is Up and Coming Artist Podcast. Of course, go back and listen to previous episodes, such as our first episode in 2019, in which Christian and I talk about our goals for the podcast in the year. And some of you who listened to that episode might remember that we haven't done any of them. Just like any good New Year's resolution, we haven't even done it. So stay tuned for next year, because the things that Christian and I talked about as goals we are going to do that just might take a little bit longer than either of us expected. So stay tuned for that, and check out on our YouTube channel, which once again is Up and Coming Artist Podcast. a video promoting these fantastic artists that we met at Ground Zero Animation Expo. Hopefully coming out before 2020. We'll see. Well, it's kind of crazy to say that it's 2020. Oh my gosh, it's so close. So, and while you're checking out the video and our Instagram, check out Miguel's Instagram, Ghosts and Toast. And see the art that we talked about in this episode and see how his influences have affected him in his comics and his book writing and all the fantastic art that we talked about in this episode. So I hope all of you guys have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and as we look forward to 2020, I hope all of you guys in whatever area of art you enjoy, keep on creating.